birth plans in their birth experience, you are in the right place. The question is, do you need a birth plan in 2020? Because there's so much information out there. Don't hospitals just give the same kind of care to everyone and it's all evidence-based? No, 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 no.
No, not
No.
really.
Welcome. Welcome to our second attempt at going live this afternoon. You know my headache with this whole platform. We're so sorry that you had to be switched around, but my name is Mandy. I am the birth nurse online and co-founder of Fearless Birth Delivered. And this is Sarah Walborn, co-founder of Fearless Birth Delivered.
Yes.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Tell us where you're watching from.
Yes. I'm going to see on Facebook if this is popping up.
Yeah, let us know. All right, tell us where you're watching from and tell us if you've written your birth plan, because I just took off a video from my YouTube channel that was all about birth plans. It was from 2017. And I was just telling Sarah, I have done maybe 4 or 5 videos about birth plans over the years. It has evolved. Birth planning has evolved. My idea around birth planning has evolved. And we are getting ready to start our second series of Fearless Birth Delivered, which is an online birth class delivered to you, right?
Yes.
In the coolest way. So cool. So we're kind of putting some tweaks on that today, and you can't move forward without understanding why it's so important to have a birth plan and what kind of birth plan works best in 2020. Right, Sarah?
Yes. We have people, let's see, Florida, Georgia, Oregon. Yeah, we've got a lot of different places all over the place. Super excited to talk about this today.
All right. So what birth plans used to be like? What did they used to be like? They used to be like check boxes, right, Sarah? Like a wish list, like a Christmas list.
Which would you rather have? This or this?
Exactly.
And not everything's listed, and it's really biased, and not really sure if this is even an option at this point. Like, let's figure this out.
Right. And you're like, it's like an intake form for the hospital, like chocolate or vanilla.
But they don't talk about strawberry, and that's the best one. Sorry.
Agree to disagree. That brings up a great point. So there's a lot to unpack about birth plans, and we're not going to like unpack the whole concept of you don't even get all of your options outlined to you inside of a hospital all the time. Right? Because there's always like, if you dig a little deeper, there's always something else that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's not always presented that it's an option.
Yeah.
But having a birth plan in 2020, so what makes it so important right now to have a birth plan and to have it different than a wish list, Sarah?
So I think it's important to have a birth plan, especially right now, for, oh my gosh, so many reasons. Where do I even start? So making sure that we know, it all comes down to education. And I know I always say this, but when we know what options we have, when we go through and we decide what our preferences are, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're setting forth a direct route, like the exact route that we want to take. What we're doing is we're looking at a route A, route B, route C, route D, all of these, and we're deciding like, which ones would I feel okay with? Which ones would I feel okay with in this situation or in this situation? And really getting a good feel for the options that we have, what we feel comfortable with. And particularly now when there's restrictions on who can be there with you whenever you are birthing, it's important to know what our options are so that way we have a better hold of what our preferences are before, and we're able to advocate for ourselves better in the birth room.
Yeah, that's really great. Let us know if you're tracking by a thumbs up, drop in the comments. Let us know Um, let us know what yours look like and if it was backed with a class or if it was like, no, this just sounded good and it's what I wanted. And I thought it was all of the choices available to me. What a lot of nurses and birth professionals say is the longer your birth plan is, the closer they'll put you to the operating room,
Mhm.
right? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
That's a very common statement because it's often seen that when people come in with a hardcore plan, right? Then the word birth plan is like doesn't even make sense.
Mhm.
The way I see a birth plan. But when people come in with like this very strict plan, a lot of times they'll end up with a lot of interventions and surgery. Do you know why that happens?
Ugh, so oh my gosh, it might be better for you to unpack that, but I will say, like, this is hard because we have to remember that there's this culture in the hospital, and there's these things that sometimes are said over and over again, and it could become a belief for a lot of the people who are working in the hospitals. And so, while they're not saying this to be gaslighty and to like undermine what your preferences might be, and that like you are a person with autonomy and like choice, and you get to make the decisions for your birth, while they may not be trying to do that, it's kind of exactly what they're doing. And so, it's it's such like a multifaceted like issue,
Yeah.
um, but I think that's also honestly why I prefer to say birth prep and birth preferences, because we can look at we can tell people what our preferences are. We can have a list of like what we would prefer to happen, um, and that doesn't mean like we're planning. Actually, yeah. And the other day on one of the local like new parent groups,
Uh-huh.
there was one person who said, "Hey, I'm 32 weeks. I'm going to be having my baby, and I just want to know what advice do you have?" It was an open-ended question. Of course, you have a whole bunch of different answers,
Right.
but one of the common things was don't go in with any expectations. Don't go in with any expectations. Don't have a plan because it never goes how you want it to go. And I feel like that's like the worst advice ever. I would never tell somebody that, because what you're doing is you're just going in, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
I mean, you don't know what's going to happen regardless, but it goes back to what we've talked about in a couple other videos. You can't slay the dragon you don't know.
Yeah.
You cannot slay the dragon you don't know. You have to know what you're going into. Even if you just do some research on what it might be and you leave the decisions to be formulated in the moment,
Yeah.
that's more. That's birth preferences. That's birth prepping.
Prep.
So you don't have to have a specific set of guidelines that you're going to follow, but at least preparing for it and at least knowing what your preferences might be is so important. So important.
Right. I think of it as a communication tool that's absolutely critical when you're up against an entire system of strangers. And even if you go to your provider and you've like been seeing your provider this whole time, they're not necessarily going to be there. They have a lot of colleagues, a lot of things show up for them. Like mine was on spring break with her kids. Okay. I choose to go to a human and I like the fact that she has children and I like the fact that she's family oriented. So they're going to take time off for holidays
Yeah.
and like sick kids. So you're walking into essentially or potentially seeing strangers. I want them damn right I have preferences, right?
Yeah. Of
Damn
course.
right
Who
I
doesn't?
have rules on my body and like I have more rules when going into a restaurant than I did with my first birth. Like how you treat my food. Like I do have an idea of expectations and I do have a standard even if I don't wear a sign that says like please don't touch my food unnecessarily.
Please don't
Please.
sneeze on my rice. Like, please
Right.
please wash my fork before I use it.
Right, I'm expecting some standards, but
Yeah.
you're going into a place with strangers, you don't know their standards, and not every hospital is the same. The biggest research that's most talked about right now is your risk for cesarean and your risk for certain interventions depends solely not solely, depends mostly, by far, big margins where you give birth.
Yeah.
The hospital across the street is not going to do the same thing as the one that you're at. And you
Yeah.
don't know what those are because those aren't published.
Exactly. And this goes back to the question that you presented in the beginning. Don't all hospitals follow the same thing and treat everybody the same
Right.
and follow the same rules for everybody? And the
Right.
answer is no.
No.
Depending on the staff that you have. You might have a different head nurse. You might have a
Mhm.
different there might be a nurse that's on shift now. You might have different care from the time you go in to the time you leave. Like there's different standards for different staff. There's different standards for different hospitals, and it's all strangers and you don't know what the standards are. 100%.
And they don't know your standards.
Exactly.
They don't know your history. They don't know your life experiences. They don't know what you're expecting. So I think a birth plan is a communication tool where you can share, like, these are my expectations for my body. These are my expectations for the golden hour. These are my expectations for my epidural, because this is what I understand to be true. So then if your team is like, oh, that's not what we do here, one, it's too late. You're already there. It's not, I mean, it's
It's not
not
too
too late.
late,
You can
but
leave, you can change things, you can adjust things, but when you think of it that way, I hope you run to your next appointment and discuss these communication ideas with your provider now,
yes.
before you're pregnant, before you choose your provider, before you choose your location. Like, that all has to happen now, because when you're faced with those people who are taking care of you and they say, "This isn't even an option here," like, you're stuck. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's stuff that you discuss early. It's not a my hair is getting, like, wackier as I touch it. It's not it's
It
stuff that
looks
you can adjust moving through pregnancy and moving through
mm,
your prep. The more you learn, the more questions you might ask your provider, the more your communication tool is going to evolve. You can even call the unit and ask them. I have clients who
mhm.
call the unit all the time. I was like, "Does your place have peanut balls?" They're like, "I don't know." They, like, call me and ask me. I'm like, "Well, I can call the hospital right now, but that would be wasting your time and money. So you call the hospital later, just ask them, because if you put a bunch of stuff on your birth plan about the expectation that you wanna use all these things and they don't have showers and they don't have birth balls and they don't have private room, I mean, they have private rooms, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's that's like a make or break for me, private room.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So you wanna know those things, and right now during a pandemic, I'm not allowed to say that. Right now during our situation, you can't take a tour usually.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, tours are kind of some places are doing, virtual tours, but really, how much feel are you gonna get with a virtual tour?
Yeah, you
Um,
can't meet anyone.
yeah, and this is a good it's also a good time to kind of, branch out and talk to other people who have birthed at certain places. Also considering whenever I say that, talk to people about what was important to them as well. Because whenever we're getting opinions from other people, so you might say, "Hey, what did your birth plan look like? Why did you choose to do this on your birth plan?" Or, "Okay, so you had a perfect birth and you thought that your birth was perfect at this place, but what was their perfect birth in their head? What were their goals with their birth, because their goals could be completely different than yours. So what a perfect birth plan is for them may be completely different than what is a perfect birth plan for you, or birth prep for you, birth preferences, however we're going to talk about it.
Right.
um, yes, like branching out, getting ideas from people who have already birthed at that place or have experience in that location, but also considering what their frame of reference is and what they are considering. Like, I had this doctor and they did a great job, and I had the best care with them, and I would recommend them 100%. And I see this on posts all the time. And then it turns out that person who said that they had the best care, well, they wanted to do they got an elective induction when the person who was asking wanted a completely intervention
They want a
free,
VBAC.
hands-free birth. Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so this recommendation was probably heartfelt and really true for the person that was holding that recommendation, but the person who was asking is looking for strawberry. They're
Right.
looking for strawberry. And so, yeah, trying to navigate that is also always really interesting.
Yeah, and yeah. I think the idea birth plan has evolved and needs to evolve as needs of birthing people change. Just like getting your feet wet with making choices, those check boxes of like, "Oh, I didn't even know this was an option." That's enormous. If you
Yeah.
didn't know it was an option, what else do you not know is an option?
Mhm.
What feels good, what sounds good now versus how do you have this, like, ever-changing, evolving idea of what's right for you because it may not be right for you in birth, practicing those discussions with your partner, whoever's gonna be with you, with your provider, whoever's gonna be with you. Like, some people need a lot of time, some people need a lot ask a lot of questions, some people feel like stage fright when they have discussions with their provider. Those are all things to kind of work through and move through as you're focusing on this, "Mandy said I need a birth plan."
Mhm.
This is, like, mine and Sarah's way of being like, "Start your prep now."
Yes.
Start getting ready because this is practice for parenthood. This is going to strengthen your relationship with your team. This is going to solidify your love for your provider or the opposite. You
Mhm.
go find another one. And we're not talking to you if you're 36 weeks. We're talking to you pre-conception,
Yeah.
early pregnancy, all the way to 42 weeks.
Yes, and it always, like, baffles me why people say, "Oh, I wanted to take this birth, prep class, but they said I have to be 28 weeks before I can take it." And sometimes I guess I can I can kind of see where we want the information to be fresh. We want you to not forget everything that we talked about whenever you're going into labor and going into birth. But also, like, what about all that practice time? What about
Yeah.
all that knowledge that you gain and now you have to mull through it and now you have to, like, be like, "What am I gonna do with this knowledge?" When you come in at 30 or yeah, at, like, 28 weeks or 32 weeks and we go through a birth prep class, like, that's not gonna be a whole lot of time to think about everything that we've discussed, to sleep on it, to go through that information and decide, "You know, I never even thought that was an option, but now that I know, this could, like, really change the way I birth my baby.
Mhm. Right,
Maybe I can
because
talk
you
to my
think of yourself
provider."
as like, "I'm this sort of person that wants this kind of birth." And then you're, like, peeking over to the other type and being like,
Like,
"No, I'm gonna have a hybrid.
yeah,
I'm gonna have an
and that's
epidural,
okay.
and I'm gonna be on my hands and knees." Like, I'm gonna not have an epidural, but I want whatever. I want
Yeah,
an induction. Like, that's a hybrid of
yeah,
what this box of, like, the type of person you thought you were.
mhm.
And, like, your friends, when you're like, "Oh, I don't think I want an epidural." They're like, "Ew, you're that kind of person. You're crunchy." Like,
You're
"Ooh,
like,
you're too good."
"Actually."
Yeah, you're too good for an epidural. You just have to decide what's important to you, and that the process of writing a birth plan or coming up with communication for your provider is gonna open up a bunch of questions, and
Mhm.
that's why I think you touched on this important topic, Sarah, which is how am I gonna remember when I get close? Because questions I get every day, "Is it too early for me to take this class?"
Yep,
We send you things so that you keep practicing, and it's always fresh.
yes, and there, you also have email support and, a Facebook community where you can ask questions and continue to learn, so that's also something that we offer. Um,
This is
another
one of my
thing.
favorite things, that's why I threw it up there, is this, um, flip book.
Yes, the flip book.
Laminated, waterproof,
Oh, it's not here. I have
flip
it in
book
my doula bag, actually. I
of
have one in my
coping.
doula bag.
Oh, you
Yeah.
do? It's coping
Mhm.
positions. It's like, of course. Oh, it's a little dusty in my office. Told you it's been a while since we had this class. That's why I'm so excited about
Oh.
November, right? Like, we don't expect
Yeah.
you to remember everything. You're pregnant. You're not gonna remember everything.
Yeah.
So, you have tools. So, you choose a class, specifically our class. No, you don't have to choose it, but we
Yeah.
would
We
love
would
to
love for
have
you
you.
to, yeah.
Right, because you
Love for
already
you.
know us and know our awful jokes. Choose a class that helps you and supports you through your pregnancy and not just at the end, because getting ready for your birth is not just about being at the end, because what we're trying to do is get you ready for parenthood.
Yes.
You're gonna have to make choices about your body forever and about your children, and about even if you're not having children, you're just birthing a baby, you need to make decisions about your body in the medical
Mhm.
complex forever,
Yeah.
right? And so this is a great way to learn how to make those decisions, make them holy, and kind of separate them from everyone else's ideas of what you should be doing, or that blind, that like, just going to trust everyone to like take care of me, and they do this for a living, and they know evidence-based medicine better than I do. That's not true. Like, there's so many resources where you can learn more up-to-date information than what is being practiced at your hospital.
110%. Yeah.
Fact. Yes.
100. And people don't believe, you're like, yeah, but really, is there? And I'm like, yes. Yes. Here's some links. Do the research yourself. Like, the answer is yes. Um, Another thing that I wanted to like quickly touch on is when we were talking about the hybrid, like making decisions and saying like, you know what, I know I want the epidural. Also, when we're doing birth prep and we're creating birth preferences, we take a good class, we can find that our decisions all impact each other. So what some people might not know is they're like, well, I don't want IV, I don't want saline. Like, I just don't want an IV in my arm. It's gonna bother me. I want, but I do want the epidural. Mm,
Ugh.
those are preferences that contradict each other. And
Yeah.
so looking at those, and no, you might not know that going in. You might just be like, no, thank you for the IV, but I will get the epidural once I'm after 6 centimeters. Knowing how to navigate that, and you don't just go in and say, I refuse the IV, I do not consent, and then saying, but I want the epidural. Like,
Mhm.
this is going to cause a lot of confusion, this is not good communication. So
Mhm.
um yeah, that's something definitely to think about and consider. My child is coming in to say
Hey,
hello.
boo. That's a great point. That's a great point. So we don't want to just say these are bad or these are good or these are right or these are wrong. Um, there's just so many different paths. So that's why checkboxes like literally box you in, because
Mhm.
that doesn't tell the whole story. And then it gets really confusing when you're like, but I didn't want this. And I thought of my experiences not having this. Um, Whereas bigger picture communication ideas are, if I don't remember what happened in class, how do I ask for more information? How do I understand? How do I move forward? And not blindly just trust the people that are taking care of you, because they don't necessarily know what your do or die choices are, what are huge for you, what are a big deal, because they're not going to be the same for everybody.
Yes.
All right. I have a question. It's not super on topic. So I'm going to just throw this bad boy back up there, because our class starts on November 4th. There are 4 weeks of classes, and registration stops in a week because we are sending you your coping kits in the mail, and we need that amount of time for shipping. So registration stops in a week. This live is going to stop in 1 minute because everyone's melting. So if you're not already in there, it's limited and it is filling up. We are so stoked to send you your coping kit.
Yes.
If you have questions,
Exciting.
drop them below. I love coming back
Mhm.
and answering them later as well. So if you're watching the replay, let us know with some emojis down there.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
Shakira,
Andrea. Sorry, go ahead.
did Andrea have a question?
Yes. Is that new program a good option for active doulas in the field? Um, I wasn't sure. Andrea, do you mean is it a good class for pregnant doulas to take? If so, I say yes. Um, but it is not a class for professional learning, if that makes sense.
Yes. It is not a class for professional learning. I do have options for nurses for workshops. That was confusing last week for someone. This is for parents,
Mhm.
parents only, and birthing people only. But thank you for the question. And thank you, Shakira. We love this topic. We love talking about birth plans. What's also in the Fearless Birth Delivered class, which is like the FabFitFun plus Lamaze mashup that we love,
Yes.
is a postpartum plan. So we haven't even gotten into that. We've talked about that before. I'll link that down below.
Yeah, we have talked about.
So yeah, we have talked about postpartum planning, which is like prep, right? Postpartum prep. Braxton Hicks?
Hmm.
Hmm.
We do talk about Braxton Hicks in our class a little bit when we're talking about the stages of labor
Yeah.
and how to recognize what stage one, the beginning, like the early stage one labor might feel like. Um, but if you have a specific question, sure, drop it in the comments. I
I
work during the
work during
evening.
the evenings. You'll be going live. Is there another option?
So we do live class. We do offer replays if you're not able to make the classes, although we do encourage you to make the class if you can. You're going to get a lot out of it if you can be present and participating. But if you want to still take the class, then you can of course sign up and do the replays and still be active in the group.
Yeah, we just still have a private group where we answer questions and sometimes have been known to post extra video there. The
Mhm.
replay comes up the next morning, so it's very fast turnaround, and your partner can take the class live if you cannot and kind of fill you in. You can watch it together later. We definitely had students watch the replay last time and still get phenomenal information out of the class, or if they couldn't attend all of them, or if they attended part of them. So
Yes.
I hear you about that other shift or time zone, and I'm sorry, but you can still get the information. It's very unique class, and you'll still get the coping kit delivered, which only comes with the class. We've had a lot of professionals ask us, please send me the coping kit, or other clients, no, only with the class.
Only the class. That's it. That's it.
Last one. Hey, Rachel. Thanks for the question. I'm really concerned my doula won't be able to be in the hospital. They are
Yeah.
due in April.
Yeah, that's hard. Um, as a doula, I'd like to say that I'm also really torn up about not being able to be present with my clients in that setting. But there are other options, like for instance, having a good class where we learned communication tools so that we're able to really communicate with our team in the moment. And that means that instead of, I don't want to say instead of, because that's not particularly what doulas do anyway, but um, you'll be able to really talk to your team and communicate with them, and that way you don't really feel like you're losing out without having your doula being there in person. That's something that I'm really working with my personal clients as well. And then also virtual services, if your doula offers them, I think are beneficial. I know that it's not in person, but sometimes when we're talking about prenatals, where your doula can really teach your partner, if you have a partner, to support you, and then they can just be a sounding board on the phone or FaceTime or whatever it is. And that way, whenever your partner runs out of ideas or maybe forgets what we've talked about, or a question comes up that you're not really sure about, you have your doula right there and you can kind of go through that with them. So I hope that that helps a little bit. And just know that our hearts are like, too, because we really
Yeah.
want to be there for you as well.
Yeah, and you weren't due till April, so you have time to, also put in a fight against that BS, rule that your hospital has because it was made up out of thin air, and there are so many hospitals across the country that have changed because of parent involvement and activism. They directly affected that stupid rule of change. And I'm going to say stupid and I'm going to get crap for it because people say, well, Mandy, you don't care about the lives of the professionals. No, I'm a nurse. I absolutely do care about the lives of professionals. That's why I argue that disposable masks are not and never have been safe to be used multiple times. That is a thing that is contributing to professionals getting sick inside the hospital. Uh, However, I do also believe that support in labor can be life or death for people
Mhm.
and can be trauma versus not trauma for people and
100.
are many times absolutely required. So, questioning, does birth belong in the hospital? Questioning, like, the hospital's ideas around doulas, it are so obvious when they give all of these, like, made up hurdles and really, really unfair hurdles for families to have doulas because then they require the doulas to pay money. They require certification. There's not a certifying body for
Mhm.
doulas that's common. So it's just these are all made up
Mhm.
hurdles and they feel like it's an easy way to limit people in the hospital or even worse, limit choices and voice among birthing people.
And
So
that's
I would encourage you to fight that and see how what other states have been doing, and we can put some links down below because other states and other doula organizations even have been fighting that state by state by state, and they're winning. They get to the governor, and the governor makes a mandate, and then all of the hospitals in the state have to allow support people.
yeah. That's definitely something that you can you can do. And also, it's worth mentioning that if you talk to your provider and they say, "Oh, you don't need a doula anyway. I'll take care of you," or "I don't really like doulas," or you know, "I've just had a lot of run-ins with doulas," or whatever the case is. Sometimes we definitely want to dive into that too and see, is my provider and is my place of birth, why are they having problems with doulas? Why do they not want doulas? Why are they not advocating for extra support? Because when we're working as a collaborating team, doulas most definitely help to make the staff and the provider's job easier.
Oh, right.
So we all work together to be a part of like to collaborate as a team. And so if that's not happening, why? And if
Yeah.
that's not something that they want to change now that other hospitals are changing, they don't want to take that lead, or they don't want to take on, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't want to implement things that other hospitals are implementing. Why?
Mhm.
What's your reasoning for keeping doulas out? And how can we change that?
Yeah, because it's evidence-based that continuous support reduce interventions, reduce risks, improve satisfaction, reduce length
Mm-hmm.
of labor. They should be reducing costs for the hospital, and the hospital isn't paying for doula support.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there are some letters already drafted that you can edit and send. There are letters that you can send out to your parent group, mom group in your community locally, and just have 30 people do it and see what happens. Because waiting to see what happens, you potentially then get to March and you're like, well, shit, I probably wish I could have sent that letter. But if y'all send it and then it still doesn't work, I mean, there's steps that you can take. And there's communities that have gone to the press and things like that. It's kind of like what's the harm in trying?
Yeah.
They're not going to like fire you from going to the hospital to have your baby. And if they do, definitely tell me about that. That's intense.
Yeah, it's very.
Yeah, Rachel, I'm gonna try to post the ones that I know of, I'm gonna try to put down here. The ones that are, like, public that I can share, I'll try to give you access because, yeah, we should not have to be reinventing the wheel. If it worked, then we should be able to use that as evidence that it can work and change should happen and mandate that.
Yes, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I want to
Okay,
be there
so
for my clients again.
yeah, you got us on this, like,
Yeah,
soapbox. Also,
I know.
Rachel, if you're having a baby in April, you need to be in our class.
Heck yes, you do.
Grab your seat, you're gonna be
Yeah,
perfect. Oh, good, your midwife's
right.
fighting.
She's right.
Good,
The
good, good.
squeaky wheel gets the oil.
That's right. Yeah,
It
I
is.
mean, yeah, you don't wanna be that obnoxious patient, why not? Why not?
You've hired them to do a job. You have hired them to help you have your baby. They literally work for you. So
Yeah.
why is the culture turned upside down? I
Like,
don't
I
know.
hope they change their no, they don't know what they need to change, they don't know how to necessarily support you best, so telling them in all the ways that you know how is a way to help them understand how you wanna be supported in their facility while you give birth.
Mhm. Yep.
Love it. You got us on this
I
soapbox
know.
tangent. I was like, this is gonna be
Birth
short. We're
plans.
gonna
Speaking of birth plans, let Jules back in us.
go. Well, it was all right. All right. We welcome your comments. We welcome your questions. And we will see you on November 4th, the first class of Fearless Birth Delivered.
Yay!
So grab your seat. The link is below so you can get your seat and you can get your coping kit ASAP and you can start flipping through all the secret stuff that's in there. It's not like
Yes,
all secret, but it's
and
cool.
more.
And there's some new stuff coming, like tattoos.
Yes,
Were
exciting.
we not telling them?
There's definitely more stuff. I
Tattoos.
mean, I think, yeah, Oxytocin Emporium, yeah, right, yeah.
Oxytocin Emporium tattoo.
Oxytocin Emporium, which is a really cool shop. If you've never heard of it, check it out. Um, it's they have tattoos, like what do they call
Temporary.
it? Temporary tattoos. That's what it is. And they say things like breathe or relax or yeah, they're really cool and they're like watercolor. They're really pretty. So you can like put them on like your wrist or something, so that whenever you're, in labor land, you have your affirmation card right there, and you don't have to worry about bringing it around with you. It's so cool.
Right.
So we have some samples of those to put in the birth boxes too. So that's exciting.
Tell us if you're coming.
Yes. Tell us if you're coming. And tell us if you want to come and go to that link and sign up because we want to see you there.
We want to see you there. Sorry about the link problems today, but we'll see you same time next week.